With the arrival of AI, we stand today at the precipice of another great reordering of civilization. Optimists speak of boundless efficiency and progress. Cynics warn of a structural, long-term rise in unemployment as skills become obsolete, and of a new poverty born not so much from scarcity, but massive wealth inequality. To understand the human shudder such collective shifts can generate, the visceral fear and the furious backlash, we must journey back to the damp valleys of Norfolk in the early 19th century, to the relentless hum of waterwheels and the birth pangs of the Industrial Revolution. And there, on the Wensum River, stood Taverham Mill. This is the story not merely of paper and print, but of the very parchment on which power was presented, and the desperate hands that once tried to tear it down. The mill's roots were ancient, recorded in the Doomsday Book. For centuries, it ground the necessities of life: corn for bread, bone for fertiliser, gorse for fodder. But in 1701, it was repurposed, printing paper, at which it excelled. For over 200 years, it mastered the alchemy of turning filthy rags into sheets of pristine white paper. Lime from cosy pits was added to fermented pulp and crushed using power from huge waterwheels. Later, steam engines hissed alongside, driving production to a staggering 25 tonnes a day. This was no ordinary mill. Literacy was becoming more widespread, and the budding middle class might have possessed two books, a Bible and a dictionary. Both will have been printed at Taverham Mill. Taverham paper was also used to print British pound notes, the very substance of financial trust across the country, the empire, and perhaps even the world. And most potent of all, Taverham supplied more than half the paper for what was then the daily news of the ruling class, the Times of London. To disrupt Taverham was not merely to attack a factory, it was to threaten the very foundation of the British state. The country was under strain in the autumn of 1830 when the swing riots were sweeping through England. Agricultural labourers, facing the bleak winter without the traditional work of threshing, smashed machines that had stolen their livelihoods. In Norfolk, the discontent had a specific industrial edge. At the vanguard was the paper-making machines. First installed at Taverham in 1809, this continuous mechanical belt produced paper faster and with fewer hands than the old vat and mould method. It was progress, but at a heavy social cost. Unemployment rose steeply, wages collapsed, poverty was acute. On Saturday, November the 27th, 1830, a mob of 200 men first attacked threshing machines at Ling before moving on to Taverham. Their collective frenzy was channeled by Robert West, a 48-year-old former soldier from the Napoleonic Wars, a family man turned gardener. Inside the mill's vast gas-lit buildings, the mob found their target and destroyed the machines. The state countered immediately, dispatching the Royal Dragoons to Norwich. But their catch was meagre. One young man, Richard Dawson, was found on the Fakenham Road, but their true prize, Robert West, was only captured after a lengthy 7-month period in June 1831. This delay proved disastrous to any prospect of West getting a fair trial. Dawson had been charged with destroying the threshing machines at Ling, and despite the judge's near direct order to convict him, local jurors, steeped in the same hardships as the rioters, had shown compassion and acquitted him. That decision had caused the public gallery to erupt in applause, but, in the view of the Home Secretary, Lord Melbourne, this was not justice. It was insubordination. The message was clear. Local jurors could not be trusted to defend the rights of the outraged wealthy owners. And so, For Robert West's trial at the subsequent summer assize, the authorities connived to select men of substance, men who were expected to side with the business owners. In short, West's right to a fair trial, the very cornerstone of English liberty, was essentially subverted. The outcome, a foregone conclusion. West was convicted and sentenced to death. Although his sentence was commuted to transportation to the penal colony of Australia, he succumbed to disease, dying a few short years later. He was made an example of, ostensibly for breaking a machine, but actually for striking at the heart of the ruling establishment. And here lies the chilling modern echo. Today, the UK government, led by Justice Secretary David Lammy, proposes a meaningful reduction in our rights to trial by jury. The government plans to entirely scrap jury trials for offences that carry sentences of up to 3 years in prison. The rationale is efficiency, but history whispers a stark warning. When the state, perhaps concerned that folk might be too compassionate, seeks to circumvent the jury, it follows a path well trodden by the Home Office in 1831. Then it was a reaction to the shock of Industrial Revolution. Today, it's the equally debilitating impact of artificial intelligence. In both eras, the fundamental question is the same. In times of profound upheaval, does the state strengthen the people's role in justice, or does it weaken it? The story of Taverham Mill reminds us that technological upheaval is never about machines, but always about the lives, the people, the communities and the social fabric that is effectively annihilated, as well as the wealth and power that is consolidated into the hands of a fortunate few. And here's the thing. It warns that when the state perceives a threat to the systems that print its money, that publish its news or define its truths, the mechanisms of justice itself can be effortlessly retooled to protect the elite, leaving the public and men like Robert West as collateral damage.